All right, I think we're going to get started here. And so for my panelists that are on the call, go ahead and make sure that you have your video turned on because as we go through intros. So welcome everybody to our weekly webinar, how to run your business online. I don't know if it's entirely, but definitely online. And this week, what we want to focus on is mastering your brokerage finances and saving costs and stimulus package. We're going to go through a lot of good stuff. And so I want to go ahead and introduce myself along with my fellow panelists. Give me a second here. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex
Hello.
Tieu. And I have, can you guys see? All right, awesome. So I'm Alex Tieu, and I got my fabulous Rob Hahn here, the notorious ROB. And then I also have here Tammy Bourdelle, the CEO of Exit Realty. So thank you so much for joining us on our weekly webinar here, where we have been exploring some very interesting topics. And definitely right now in today's time, this is very timely with what to do with brokerage finance. And so, just a little bit about me, just want to introduce myself to the attendees and everybody watching. I'm Alex Tieu, CEO of Propy, and we do these, weekly webinars to really talk and dig into, tools and what we can do right now, especially with the coronavirus that's happening and how we can help agents to work efficiently and make decisions now that's going to really help their business in the future. So that is the purpose of this webinar and why, we've had a pretty good following here. So without further ado, I'm going to actually introduce to everyone in the group the guest speakers here. And if Rob and Tammy, if you don't mind, if you can do a quick intro before we get into the questions and, into the topics that we have prepared here for everyone.
All right. Ladies
Who would like to
first.
go first? Tammy, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm Tammy Bourdelle. I'm the CEO for Exit Realty Corp International. I've been in the real estate industry for more than 30 years. Prior to coming to Exit, I was instrumental in building 3 major brands. So I've been through an awful lot of waves in this real estate industry.
All right. And I'm Rob Hahn of 70S Associates, and most of y'all know me for my blog at Notorious Rob.
Well, welcome. You guys are the both of you are very modest. That's that was the shortest intro, but let's get to the important thing, what everybody's here to really talk about. So, the first question I have is actually for you, Tammy. Let's set up this webinar talking about the big picture on a macro level, right? Where is this market going, and where's it going to take brokers and agents? Can you tell us? Can you just frame this for us, this conversation?
Sure. Well, I'd like to give you the big picture, even on kind of that 30,000 foot view. Part of my job is to be a good forecaster as CEO and to have that picture of where things are going. So I had an opportunity to spend some time with a lot of economists, not just the chief economist for the California Association of Realtors, but economists that write for like the Wall Street Journal and that kind of thing, to get a picture and a perspective on what they call an incident, right? We have a circumstance that's here right now, and what they do to make a judgment call on where things are at and where things are headed. One of the best things that they do, and I always look for where's that common thread, where's that consistency from the economists that they're all saying something that's similar. If it's everybody's all over the map, then all bets are off. But typically when you see some sort of a common thread, you feel pretty comfortable that that's where we're headed. And so when we have an incident like 2000, when everybody thought it was going to be 2K and we were going to be in all sorts of trouble, or when we had 9/11, those are incidents that the incident happened, Y2K, those incidents happened because of the event. So right now with the virus, with COVID-19, it's because of the event. When we had 2008 and we had the recession, it was because of everything. It was a perfect storm. So the mortgage-backed securities, the stock market, real estate industry, employment, everything, it was literally the perfect tsunami, the perfect storm. So we came into it slow and we came out of it really slow. They feel strongly that because this is an incident and we had the mortgages rates were great, the stock market was doing excellent, the unemployment was going incredibly well, the real estate market, other than luxury, was going really, really well, and luxury had only slowed down, it didn't stop. That they had that's a good picture. So once we flatten this curve, they feel very strongly that we're going to come out of it pretty quick on the other side. And I think that's a huge thing for everybody to be a little bit reassured that this isn't forever. If everyone would stay in place, we would obviously solve that quicker. But I also had the opportunity to get on the phone with Freddie Mac a few weeks back, and right when we were just getting into this and they were having a conversation. One of the things that they said that had true value was that Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and FHFA are in lockstep, so that they're not going to get political. They're going to all be in agreement of what's going on. If they're all going to allow 6 months for everybody to be able to, that have been affected by this, whether losing their job or getting the illness, then all of them are going to be in agreement. If they're all going to be in agreement that for at least the next 60 days that they're not going to foreclose on anybody, everybody's going to be in agreement. And that's a terrific thing because it provides stability. We're not worried about people competing with each other. So that's a good kind of foundation for where we're at. We also have a lot of solutions out there for people so that they have options while they're at it here. So that's just kind of on a larger scale before we get into talking about, okay, day to day, how does this impact me?
Right, right. And I definitely agree with you that I've seen a lot of economist reports that, you know, real estate is going to come out of this a bit pretty strong because of the way that we got into this. Rob, would you agree with that?
I agree with that 100%. And the only thing I would add to it is, again, there's been no real reliable research done on this, but Americans have a lot of equity in their homes, right? So some of the stuff that really troubled real estate back in 2008, 2007, you know, when that happened, you know, all the no money down ninja, all of those things, that's just not in place now. So I'm calculating Americans probably have somewhere between 30 and 37% equity in their homes, you know, depending on which data source you look at. And just to keep this in context, you know, from the height of the bubble to the bottom of the trough was a 35% decline in values, which means the likelihood of that happening is just very, very unlikely for all the reasons Tammy mentioned. This is a, you know, as I like to say all the time, this is not a housing problem. This is not a real estate problem. This is a pandemic, you know, which hopefully we had like a nice sharp V-shaped recovery, suffer for maybe a quarter, right? Maybe we suffer for a few months. And then when we come out the other end, people aren't going to do jingle mail. They're not going to be underwater. You know, the market will come back. And I think it'll come back pretty strong.
Right. And I would think that a lot of the folks that are, for example, going on furlough will be back to work at that point.
That's obviously everyone's hope.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So let's get into, so that's the macro level. So I think that's a great way to, you know, really shape and, you know, frame the conversation that we're going to have today. So what brokers, agents, and teams do now? So what do you think is what would you recommend for each broker? Now I'll probably start with Rob, and, you know, what do you think the next 3 months? So 2 questions. What do you think the next 3 months is going to look like for brokers, agents, and teams, right? And then the second question is, what do you think they should do about it?
So it's really unclear because of there's, you know, all these government programs like the PPP and the EIDL and all of those things. I know you're going to talk about that kind of towards the second half. My take on it is that a number of smaller brokerages that are not particularly well capitalized are going to be in deep trouble because, so keep in mind, this is not a real estate problem, right? This is a, you know, just a bizarre once in a lifetime situation. We may have completely frozen markets for the next however long, right? Let's say a month, let's say 2 months, whatever it is. So everything depends on how much cash you have in the bank, right? It doesn't matter what your pipeline was, doesn't matter what your pendings were. The only thing that matters on whether you survive this or not is how much cash do you have in the bank so you can pay your expenses. Some of the government programs, the loans, et cetera, will certainly help with that. And when you come out the other end, you know, it should look good. You know, my concern really has to do with just some of the brokers that I happen to know what their financials look like, they're not in great shape. Some are in fine shape. Some can make it 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Some can make it 3 weeks. So if you're in that latter category, you have got to just really think about, how do I increase cash flow? How do I decrease outgoing cash flow? How do I preserve as much cash as possible? Because like we said, when things come back, I think it's going to be a super hot market like we had for the first quarter. So everything comes down to, do you survive? How do you survive this crunch?
Right, right. And what would you recommend? What about you, Tammy? What do you think the next few months are going to look like for brokers and agents? And what are you advising your agents? You have a lot of brokers and agents that are in your company. What are you advising them?
Well, a couple of things, and that goes back to the 30,000 foot view and then getting that street level view. 79% of the brokerages in the United States have 6 agents or less. And a good chunk of those, the top producer in that office is the broker owner. So they're already putting money back into their company to carry their company. A lot of them are getting a little bit tired. And I think even this time frame home to really think about what it is that they want, that they're starting to think about what their options are and what their choices are. I don't think we'll see as many close as we'll see a lot of mergers and roll-ins. I've personally spoken to 40 potential mergers just in the last 5 days.
Wow.
So they're thinking about it, and they're really thinking about what their future is and what makes the most sense for them. Do they find the chemistry of finding a company that fits them, that suits who they are, so that they can make sure that they all care about their agents, that they make sure that their agents are taken care of, but they also make sure that their future is taken care of. And what does that look like for them? Because no one's going to write a giant check for those smaller brokers, right?
Right.
They'll write a giant check for somebody doing thousands of transactions because they know that it's a proven entity, and it's not counting on typically that one specific person being in place with that handful of agents. It's a well-oiled machine, and they have more business acumen. That's the difficulty of a lot of these brokerages. They were really good real estate agents. They got a broker's license, hung up a shingle, and set them in business, but that didn't necessarily mean that they had business acumen, right? So I think they're making a lot of those decisions. Right now, what I would do, I would, number one, I would look at my profit and loss, and I would look at all my variable costs, and I would have a conversation with every single creditor, even if I'm in good shape. I would have a conversation with every single creditor, regardless of the shape I'm in, so that I know that some of our brokers, they own their own building. I was actually talking to a broker last week. In a ride, he was taking a drive to check on a property that was 4 hours away from where he was, his own personal property, checking on a property about 4 hours away. And in the 4-hour drive, he cut $6,000 a month off his monthly expenses. He refinanced his mortgage on his property because he owned the building. And then he looked at what was going on with lead generation. What was he getting a return on investment? You know, when money's coming in like crazy, I think people don't pay as much attention to where their money's going, and because they have plenty of money to pay it. So it's not something that they keep such a close eye on. Right now, I would the very first thing I would do is I would look at my profit and loss, and I would look at every single expense I have, literally all the variable costs. What are those things that I'm getting a return on investment for? What could I change? Maybe it's something that I could do differently with cell phones, with utilities, all those kind of things. But if I have a mortgage, interest rates are great on commercial lending. And if you've already got a proven ability to pay at a higher rate, obviously you're going to have a proven ability to be able to pay now. And those local banks, especially if you're utilizing somebody that's local for your own commercial loan, they're going to bend with you because they have a whole lot better shot of you paying, and they don't want to lose any clientele, right? If you're renting, talking to your landlord, and I'm seeing a lot of landlords be very proactive. They're coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to give you 3 months free right now so that they keep the same tenants. They want to hang on to them. Or they're cutting it in half, or they're cutting it to a third because they know that there's going to be this period of time. So getting as smart as you can about that, so you know exactly where you stand and you're not spending more money than you have to. It's a good exercise that everybody should be doing every single quarter. At the end of every single quarter, you should be looking at what you're getting a return on investment for and what it is you're spending the money for, and does it make sense in your business going forward. But this is the forced opportunity for people to do it.
Well, I mean, let's just get into specifics right there. I mean, we talked about a couple of things. We talked about having those tough conversations with your landlord, and finding a way to cut that cost. But let's just be honest, expense for brokers and teams are really having staff and really your overhead, which is your rents, right? So
Right.
Mhm.
how are you advising brokers to deal with that?
Well, first, some of them are in great financial shape, so they don't have to think about it. But, I would still apply for the SBA loans. It's there and it's available. And
Right.
it makes sense to do it. And a couple of things that I think people are unaware of, and I think you have an attachment that's going to come out afterwards that shows a bunch of links, including a podcast that went on today that was interviewing somebody that is really high up in National SBA so that they can really understand. It's really done so well on questions and answers. But a couple of things that people aren't really aware of. Number one, the SBA loan is also available for landlords.
Mhm.
And so landlords that are out there that are struggling, they have an option and they have a choice that's out there too. If they go for the loan that they can get $10,000 instantly, we're hearing that they're getting it in literally 1 to 5 days.
Wow.
The whole process of the rest of the loan is taking 2 to 3 weeks. They've revived their entire website. So if you look at it now, it's really a great opportunity. But even if you don't need the money, apply. Because
Right.
what's the worst thing that can happen? You have the money and you don't use it and you pay it back.
Yep.
That's an amazing opportunity. And the
Well,
loan.
Tammy, we have a question here from one of the attendees asking if S Corp is eligible for an SBA loan. Do you know the answer to that
Yes,
question?
you can
Yes.
even be an independent. You can even be an independent contractor and be an agent, and you're still eligible for an SBA loan.
Right.
That's right.
So I've heard that many times, especially the $10,000 real quick SBA. That's sound advice. I think every agent should apply for it, and that S corps are definitely eligible. So let's actually get into that a little bit more. What do you think? So right after this, I'm going to actually have a slide for everyone to see. Actually, I'll pull it up right now, and let's talk a little bit about PPP, CARES. I think we just talked about SBA. I'm actually going to pull up the slide right now. And for everyone that registered for the webinar and folks that are on the call, you will actually get this email to you, all these slides. Because on this webinar, we're going to go through two things. We're going to go through resources that you can absolutely look at. And then the second thing is also places where you can get discounts or services for free right now as we're going through this transition. So I'm going to actually pull this up. And Tammy, if you can go ahead and start talking about PPP, and Rob, if there's anything you like to add about that, this would be a great spot to add.
So PPP is a payroll protection program. It has to be paid back in 2 years, but it's only at 1% interest. So that's a pretty awesome opportunity for people. And you can go up to $10 million. That's huge. This podcast that's at the bottom of this, by the way, it's phenomenal on answering all the basic questions. The CARES Act is if you cannot make your monthly mortgage payment. Like I mentioned, and I want to say this on a good note too, that not only is the CARES Act there if you cannot make your mortgage payment, so that they're trying to protect everybody and stop anybody going into foreclosure, but Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHFA have also joined together to be incredibly flexible on transactions that are out there that are still happening, so that they're making it incredibly flexible for appraisals. You might have to get an extra review on an appraisal because they're not going into the home. There might be a circumstance that they can't go into the home. And they're also doing verbal verification of employment, and obviously they're not reaching the office because people are working from home. So they are literally turning on a dime and being as flexible as they possibly can so that things don't fall through the cracks. So the biggest thing we're seeing fall through are in resort areas where everybody lost their job at Disney and Universal, in resort areas, and where buyers have lost their jobs. That's really the biggest area that we've seen a fall apart, because you got to remember that people move because of their circumstances. They don't move because we just told them there's this unbelievable opportunity. They usually move because they're getting married, they're getting divorced, they're adding children, they're downsizing, they're upsizing, they're making more money, they're making less money, they're relocating. It's always circumstances that do that. So they're trying to keep that machine moving as good as humanly possible. The $10,000, the EIDL loan that is really, it's phenomenal. The payment is deferred for the first 11 months. So you don't have to pay a payment till the 12th month. Include the $10,000 advance that they're giving right away is completely forgivable. Biggest thing, the difference between the EIDL loan, which the EIDL loan is actually provided by the government, and you have to go through your lender for the PPP loan. And there are some banks that don't understand it enough so that they're not providing it. So it's a good opportunity for you to reach out and find out who is. If you're a local bank, that's where you want to go first because you have a relationship. But if you cannot go to your local bank because they're not doing it, or they're afraid of it, or they don't know how to go about it, then absolutely just reach out to the larger banks or reach out to the people that you know in your marketplace so that you can find the right bank to go through. SBA has cleaned up their website, unbelievable, so that it's very easy, it's very user-friendly. If you applied before April 1st, especially for the $10,000, there was a lot of changes that happened over last week. Reapply. Even if you reapply and you add something to your loan, you're gonna still stay in the same place that you were in process for that loan. So that's a good thing, because I think everybody was afraid if they added anything else to it, or they went for the $10,000 advance up front, or they went into payroll relief, or whatever it is that they tried to change. They were really afraid that that means that they're going to have to start all over again. And they are moving quicker than, for sure, than I've witnessed. So it's a great opportunity. And all of these links, which we're going to provide afterwards, give you a complete description of what it is, so you know what type of loan makes the most sense for you personally.
Right. And there's a,
can I add one thing to that? Just because I'm not an expert in this area at all, except that I did go through this PPP process recently just to see. And one thing that to keep in mind is that sole proprietor, your net sort of income from that is considered part of the payroll. So if you're an agent and you have a S Corp, you have a sole proprietorship, whatnot, and you're like, I don't have any payroll, actually whatever you paid yourself is considered payroll up to the limit of the 100,000 annually. So it's something worth looking at. You know? Here's
one of the catches though, that everybody wants to really pay attention to. And that is that, and because we know that a lot of salespeople don't file their tax returns on time. Mm-hmm. And so even though we have till July 15th now, because of what's going on, they have to have their Schedule C completed or for 2019, or they can't apply for the loan. And they have to have already finished and have their 2018 complete in order to apply for the loan. And that a lot of people have not been aware of until they go to apply and they're in a panic situation.
Right.
So they definitely have to have that available. And also they're going to use the number after you've done all your deductions. So pay attention to that. So
that's right.
You might be making 100 grand, 150 grand, but by the time you get done, it turns out that it's 14,500, and that's what they're going to base what they're going to give you money on. So it's really important to be aware of that. But something beats the living daylights out of nothing, right?
Yeah, and I think just, I think it's probably a pretty good idea to have a conversation with your accountant, before you even go through the whole application process. EIDL is a little bit different, but
broker owners, the PPP is actually forgivable if 75% of it is spent on salary. That's right. That the loan is forgivable. And I mean, that's just unheard of. You're going to get a government loan that's actually forgivable, and the 10 grand is forgivable instantly, even if you get declined on the rest of the loan.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's something really important for everybody to understand. If you have to tap into your retirement for any reason, you have to tap into your retirement, which obviously retirements are probably worth a little bit less considering what we've just gone through. But if you have to tap into your retirement for anything, even if it's a temporary gap to be able to fix things for yourself, the IRS will waive the 10% penalty. Right. And so that's helpful for people too. Every little bit helps, right?
I think the only thing I would say about retirement is this is just my personal opinion, that should be very last resort, because there, you do have to pay it back. And, you know, part of it is, you know, it is your retirement. And so I would really encourage all of our listeners to look at these. I mean, this is beautifully laid out. These 6 different programs that you should absolutely consider if you, for brokers, agents, and teams before digging into retirement. Just because it is a very slippery slope, and I've seen it happen way too many times with agents that dip into their retirement and they just have a hard time getting out of that.
Yeah, I wanted to touch base on a couple of things just in regard to costs for people to really pay attention to that they might need to do immediately. If you're not going to do SBA, or there's not an opportunity for you to be able to utilize SBA, you know, checking in obviously on unemployment, but all there are a couple of things that I think people really need to be aware of. Number one, watch out for scams, because there's a lot of them out there. And, you know, it's unbelievable that people will prey on people during this time, but they will. So you want to really be aware of that, and try and pay attention to all the things that you have, like auto pay. You probably have a lot of things you auto pay that you don't even remember that you auto pay, and maybe some of those things that you don't need. Then from a marketing standpoint, obviously you still want to be out in front of people and you want to connect with people, but maybe you should do a little more on social media and connecting with those individuals. This is a perfect opportunity to connect with human beings and humanize instead of lighting too much money on fire. And one of the areas that I see people forget a lot is insurance. You know, you have every kind of insurance that, known to man, right? You have the business insurance, liability insurance. You raise the deductible on everything so that you're just cutting down that monthly nut on everything. Every single thing, like you've exhausted everything. Car dealerships are phenomenal. Your car loans and trying to think of the word, credit unions are really good about tacking 6 months on the end side so that you get a reprieve and you can breathe on car payments and that kind of thing. So as you start going through that, the other part of it is, you know, mindset is 4 times as important as our activities in order for us to function during this time. And that people are so emotional, and I'm watching people that are, they're either off the deep end, and some of them are people that I didn't expect to be off the deep end, right? I expected them to be calm, cool, and collected. They're really high up, and they've always seemed grounded and have their act together. And then some people that really react to small things are handling this and taking this in stride. But one of the best things that you can do for yourself is feel like you're in control. So if you've gone through the entire list and you've made progress and you've lowered what your monthly overhead is going to be, and now you're reaching out to all your clients, past, present, and future clients, so that you're connecting with everybody. And right now I would recommend more of an empathy-oriented approach. How you holding up? You know, they're going to utilize you and remember that you reached out to them during this time. So the more things you do like that, and the more things that you have in control, the better your mindset's going to be. And it's a whole lot easier to attract new business, new agents, and everything else when your headspace is in the right place.
Right. And we actually have a question here from the audience. The CARES Act, what type of scams are you seeing out there? Has anybody seen with some of the scams that are happening, so that we can warn the folks here?
Well, you know, I actually got a couple today from credit cards and banks sending me, you know, that all I have to do is fill out this information, and you know, and you know, that you getting all these emails, and obviously we get them in phone calls all the time. Nobody, your own bank is not going to call you and ask you for that information. They have your social security number. They have what your loan debt is. They know all of that stuff. So it's you proactively going through the list of everybody you owe and reaching out to them personally. And, you know, most of them have an opportunity to really be flexible. And we've witnessed them being flexible. So I think the biggest thing is don't panic.
Don't panic, have a plan. That's the motto for this webinar. Have a plan and work your plan. And, you know, so that's definitely, you know, loud and clear here. And I actually have a comment here from some folks about, you know, making sure you call your credit card companies and, you know, deferring those payments. And one of the things I always, that I'm hearing more and more of is really having this action plan, because at the end of the day, if you do nothing, your credit is going to get hit. And so if you do nothing with your credit cards, with your car payments, with all these things, it's better to make those arrangements now, even if you have to sit on the call for 3-4 hours, which is literally the case for everyone, to make those arrangements, because that's how we're going to get through this and, you know, have a plan that to really, you know, lower those expenses, but also have a plan to really come out of this. So I think that we're going to be running time shortly here, but before we go into some of the things I want to go into at the very end of this, which are, you know, companies I think that are doing extraordinary work, giving discounts, and, you know, and of course, Propy is a tech company. So, you know, we support brokers, and when brokers and agents and their business are hit, then we're also hit. So for us, we're constantly doing what we can to make sure that, you know, all of the customers and our community come out of this stronger. So thank you so much. Now, each of you, if you had a quick 2 or 3 things, and it can be specific or overall, what would you recommend for, you know, each broker or agent to do? I know we talked about expenses, we talked about how to cut them, some strategies and some programs, or is there anything that you want to leave the audience with here before, you know, we kind of wrap up in the next few minutes at the end?
Go ahead,
Let
Tammy.
you go first, Rob.
All right, I'll go first. So obviously I'm going to base this a lot on kind of some of the top teams and brokers I've spoken to, you know, ever since this thing popped up. And I just put together a large research study. So I had the opportunity to just interview about 16 of them in a very short period of time. The one piece of advice that just makes a ton of sense strategically, but as well as what they were saying, the very last thing you should be looking at cutting is your staff. And the reason they've brought it up, and it makes perfect sense, we're going to come out of this, right? So unless you're really in a desperate cash position where you just don't think you're going to make it, if you feel that you are financially healthy enough to come out of this, when you come out of this, you need to be able to ramp back up very, very quickly. If you're laying off staff, it's going to take a lot longer, right? You know, first you have to call hey, you're back, you know, you're back from furlough, blah, blah, blah. But then there's also the morale problem. Just, you know, picture yourself being one of the staffers, you know, brokerage manager, transaction coordinator. Hard times come, you laid me off, right? How are they going to feel about that 3 months from now when they come back? So the recommendations that made a ton of sense is do everything you can to make that the very last cut, right? I mean, look, obviously, given your particular situation, that's something you might have to do. But really, it should be, you got to be thinking about how do I recover? You know, think about the bounce back and who are you going to need in order to do the bounce back? So that's just what, and again, you know, it really depends on your particular situation, your particular financial health, but that's something that I thought was really insightful.
Right. Do you think, Rob, and this is just a question now that you're making me think, that, you know, brokers or these teams and brokers are actually, this time has actually made them a bit more efficient when it comes to working virtually and, you know, looking at how they're using their staff, for example. And
I've heard a lot of that. I've also heard there's also mindset change in the staff, right? That when this thing hit, you know, a lot of their admin staff basically all of a sudden found that those jobs that were beneath them in February are no longer beneath them, right? And it's all hands on deck, and it's, you know, it's and everyone is sort of making the sacrifice, but at least the people I've spoken to, you know, which, let's face it, they tend to be on the more successful, better business operators. They tend to be a lot healthier. They're just looking at this as an opportunity to really grow market share, because they really think that some of their competitors, some of their peers are not as well set up as they are, and they're not as good at the business operation side of it. So they're actually in sort of an aggressive mode. And none of the ones that I've spoken to have laid off staff. You know, they've done all of the arrangements with landlords. They've done arrangements with banks. They've done all of those things to try and preserve cash. But the very last thing they're going to do is lay off staff, because they expect when we come back from this in 30, 60, 90 days, we can hit the ground running. Other people are going to take a bunch of time, you know, to try and get back up to speed, and I'm going to crush them. I mean, that's something I've heard consistently.
Interesting. Tammy, what do you think?
I think that I agree. Even if, you know, first you have to stay true to your brand. And so if your brand, like our brand, is built on human potential, so we can't say humans are that valuable and then let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And we've witnessed really large brands out there laying people off in droves. Even 150 people getting the same email at the same time. Well, thank you for how worthwhile I was, right? That's a horrible thing. And now you don't have any loyalty. But that human element, number one, that human element is too valuable, but their skill set is too valuable. To retrain everybody and ramp everybody back up again would be ridiculous. If you even had to cut their hours a little bit, it's much smarter to do that and cut their hours a little bit and say, we're all in this together as a team. And as soon as we can, we'll rise to the occasion, because they're not going to trust you the same. And you really need to have that trust in the relationship. But the other part of that, I think that's incredibly important. If you're a broker and you're a leader, you need to connect with your people and communicate with them. I'm witnessing a lot of people ducking. They don't know what to say, so they're not saying anything. Set up Zoom calls like this so you can see how everybody's doing. You can literally see their face, so you can see how they're reacting. Are they freaking out? Are they disconnected? Or are they all the way in here? Because they can stay in the same right activities and reach out to everybody. And there's going to be an amazing silver lining for doing acquisitions, for recruiting agents, for doing transactions. But stay in touch with people and be visible. You know, technology, the magic of being able to do Zoom calls or being able to do video, or even just picking up the good old fashioned phone and checking in on people to see how they're doing. Stay connected, because that's going to create the loyalty factor that's going to get you out of the gate a whole lot faster on the other side.
Well, this is just as a testament to you, Tammy. I was actually talking to a couple of Exit Realty folks, and this is what they said to me. They said that our brokerage over communicates, and that's actually a good thing. So that was something they told me without you knowing. So I'm letting you know that that is something that your folks are saying to people they see, and it definitely resonates with, you know, interviewing you right now and all the valuable information that you have. And so I think thank you so much. And you know what we're going to do now in our last few minutes here is that we are going to go through you know, some other things. For one of the things I definitely want to highlight is companies such as Propy, who's actually doing some discounts as well. So we recently just did a joint thing with NAR. We're part of the NAR Reach program. And every single company on that Reach program got together, and we decided to do discounts and different free services for the next few months. And so I'm actually going to share that with you. And like in all of my webinars, at the very end, I share some tidbits that has to be a little tech, because we are a tech company, and really go through and see where that can actually help. And so I'm actually just going to go and share my screen here, and I'm just going to review a couple of what those tidbits are. So first thing is Propy, which, you know, we are in conjunction with NAR and Reach doing that discount for Propy. And so again, supporting our brokerage community during this time. And then this is actually, the next screen is actually all the various Reach programs that got together and did discounts. We're going to email this out to everyone. And it's everything that you can see here, from marketing to you know, what Propy does, which is a lot of our offer management that helps agents work more remotely online, and brokers too. And so that's what this is. And then I'm going to actually end this with something that I think is really valuable. As everyone knows, virtual tours is a very big thing right now. And this is actually not, you know, one of the Propy companies, but what is great is that, you know, Matterports, I'm seeing agents spending like $300-400 for Matterport, or, you know, having to spend money on like a big camera that's $1,000, or, you know, a lot of virtual tours. I actually found a virtual tour company where you can do a virtual tour on your cell phone, which is, I think, and you can literally buy this device for like, I think, $60 on Amazon and put your phone on it. So I wanted to just show everyone this and see it real quick so that you can see how it works. And I think that, you know, if we're talking about cutting costs, this is going to be something that everyone can use. It's a friend of ours, a friend of mine, Astro Room is the owner, and I'm just going to show you a quick video on that. Oops, sorry about that. right. That was very short and, hopefully of value to folks that are just joining us. And thank you so much for my guests that are joining. I have a comment here. I have comments here. Thank you for the demo. That's great. And Tammy, I actually also have a comment here. Tammy is so strong, solid, shoot straight. Thank you so much. That's from some of the comments that I'm seeing here on the chat. And Rob, thank you so much for your time as well. And, join us next week. So next week, I'm going to be having some amazing speakers. It's from our indie group. And so it's going to be Jackie Soto from eHomes. I mean, she is killing it right now. I think she took virtually, remotely 5 listings in the last, a few days, a week or so. And we have Courtney also at Acme Real Estate, and they're going to be taking from the indie, how to survive and thrive in this market as an indie broker. So thank you so much for joining us. So join us next week, same time on Wednesday, same place. And we will this time be focused mainly on indie brokers and what they're doing and how they're not only surviving, but they're but they're thriving through this with some very strong indie brokers on the panel. So thank you so much. Any last words, Tammy and Rob, before we wrap this up?
Get aggressive.
And while you're home and you're stuck inside, grow, learn as much as you possibly can. Surround yourself with smarter people, listen to podcasts, and focus on growing so that you're making progress every single day.
Great. All right, guys, thank you so much. And we will send this recording out to everybody who's registered, and have a wonderful day, and let's go and keep moving forward. Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.